It's actually more dissonant than I anticipated. One second though, I gotta let my cat in. My name's Dev. Welcome to my room under the stairs, where I'm going to try and write the best piece of music that I can in 1 hour starting now. I've limited myself both physically and by time because I cut my fingers pretty bad, and it's kind of made it a little bit difficult to play. But I'm not going to let that be an excuse, so yeah, let's get into it. I've had this idea for what I think is a pretty cool riff, so I'm going to take it, iterate it as much as possible, layer it, and try to make something really cool with it. And maybe it'll suck, but maybe it'll actually be pretty sweet. So yeah, let's get into it. And that's basically it. It's kind of got like this super groovy Meshuggah, I don't know, periphery vibe to it. But yeah, I think that was a pretty decent take. So now we are going to do the other side. I think I might have slipped a little bit out of time there between the two. A little bit, but that's okay. Once I get the drums written, I'll then re-record the guitar and re-record or record the bass, so it's not a huge deal. Yeah, all right. Let's do drums. I keep everything super zoomed in here because there's like 900 tracks in this template, which is a little inconvenient at times. I should probably do this from like fresh sometime, but here we are. I usually like to start with cymbals. Used to be kicks, but I start with cymbals now as a means of keeping time. Kind of work out the accents with the cymbals, because if you were a drummer, you can only play with 2 hands and 2 feet. So to do anything which would contradict that makes it really unrealistic when they're already, you know, programmed drums. And I'll start with quarter note accents, but it might change to like half notes or something else. Cool. And then I will do the snare. repeat is. Like a samba beat, but I don't think that really fits. These toms sound so terrible without any post-processing on them. And that's where that riff ends. I think it's kind of cool, kind of delaying it, almost turning it into like a bar of 8/8 with that, you know, half step down move. It's all the little subtle nuances that make music yours, and I think that's really cool. Okay. Sounds good. I'm pretty sure it was the right track that I need to re-record, but it should be a lot easier to kind of get it synchronized now that I have a kick. And I'll really try to get the purr, very subtle palm muting. It's really easy to mess up. Not bad. It's still a little bit off. I'm not really going for like absolute perfection here, and one of the worst things you can do if you're not playing super consistently is kind of chasing your own tail, where you record one track, get it perfect, and then you notice that the other side is a little bit out, and then you record that one and get it perfect, and then you notice the other side is a little bit out. I'm not a huge fan of like post-editing. I think you can overcome a lot of issues when recording by just being better, but I've kind of been out of practice for a couple days, so I'm a little bit sloppy, but what can you do? Okay, now I got a really cool, or I can hear a really cool kind of clean idea in my head. See if I can find a interesting tone. That one does sound good, but it's not quite it. Super modulated clean, I think, is the ticket for this one. And I'll do something pretty weird. The sound that's in my head is like kind of like a arpeggiated chord with a little bit of dissonance thrown in between the two sides. I think that's it. Won't have to move my index finger too much, so I can apply a bit of pressure. But yeah, let's see how this works out. I hope it's loud enough that you can actually hear it when I'm recording, but if not, it'll make sense later. Now, the subtle dissonance that's going to occur with this is I'm going to take the what would that be? The sixth off of that root. And I'm gonna make it really dissonant by playing the other side a half step up. So let's see how that sounds. Now a playthrough. I think that's a little bit distasteful. It's actually more dissonant than I anticipated. Just that last note, and it really throws it. I think something that might be cooler, this is where iteration comes into play, taking something and making it better through continuous repetitions or focused improvement on one specific thing every time you do a repetition. So instead of doing that, I'm going to do the whole thing a whole step down and see how that goes. But I need a click. Let's see how that sounds. I think it's starting to sound pretty sweet. 1 second though, I gotta let my cat in. Okay, where to go next? It's crazy how simple this is, but it's already starting to sound like a pretty cool, progressive piece of music. There is more that I could do to the drums, but first I'm going to record bass. Okay, it took a minute to get the bass tone figured out, but let's see how this all comes out. I'm doing a few cats are ridiculous. Doing a few nollie tricks here. So first is using one of these Dunlop Cortex 60mm picks. It kind of gives like a natural progression, natural compression to the pick attack. So you end up with a lot more consistent accents when you're picking. And that makes a very big difference when it comes to recording bass. The cat out. Okay, back to it. Now the next track is going to be, let's see what I'm doing for time here. Oh, I am crushing this. I might actually be able to make a whole song here. So for the other track, I know it says bass left and bass right, but they're both gonna be panned to the center, and this one's just gonna be the DI. And that gives kind of a, when it comes to layering bass, I think it adds a little bit, so you get like the clear low end that's not super distorted, although the bass tone that I had developed kind of does that with a little bit of EQ, but layering. I need the click track. I do need to put a transposer on this DI though, sadly, because the strings on this bass are not heavy enough to tolerate that tuning well. It's dropped G, so yeah, whatever. Now let's take a listen all the way through, both bass tracks, all the rhythm and drums and clean stuff, and let's see if there's anything else I can do to this riff to make it really pop. honestly think it is starting to sound really good. And when I do the realism with the drums, which is basically like changing velocities and timing and stuff like that for hits, I think it's going to sound a lot better. Drums for me take a really long time to write. Because I find that a good drum line versus a not very good drum line is the difference between something being like really good and something kind of sucking. So I think a good way to go about it is to just write something, so at the end of the day at least you know what not to write. And then as time goes on and you listen to the piece of music over a longer time span, you start to get an understanding of like, okay, I was a little bit biased to this one sound at this time. I think this is better. You can, if you take a bit of a break from it, you can kind of remove yourself from the emotional aspect and think about it more from a logical standpoint of what actually sounds good, and you're not, you know, becoming biased to something that you think sounds cool. And if it's not a definite yes, then it should probably be no. I'm going to record the left guitar track. Make sure I'm not recording bass. Re-record the left guitar track. Get the same amount of purr that's going on in the right guitar track. And then I think just to add a little bit more articulation to the guitar part, I'm going to do a piece with single coil only that's going to be pan center. Listen to it back. Okay. Yeah, now in the context of the whole, like, of the sum of all of these parts, I can tell that there's something missing from the guitar tone, and that could be resolved through mixing. I do also think that when you start bridging the gap between just two tracks, one left, one right, towards quad tracked, playing the same part. There's a sense of fullness that comes with it. And I have this other tone it's kind of similar to that last one, but it's got a lot more of the kind of woofy mids. And I think that's going to fit pretty well, especially if I do like the single coil kind of sound, but we'll see. I think it's just going to add a sense of fullness that is otherwise lacking from the guitars in a part of music like this. I always forget to turn the click on. Let's see how this all sounds together. I think it's starting to sound pretty sweet. There's a little bit of mixing stuff that's gonna have to go on. There's like probably can't tell from this. It could just be a level thing, but the pick attack on the bass is not great. Like there's a very definite click with it. Yeah, the drop in level on the main bass track, I think, rectified that. You can still hear it, but that's just like the actual accent. What I was referring to was more of like a clicky sound. Well, it took less than an hour to write this part. I'm pretty stoked with how it turned out. If you have any questions about anything, any of the process, anything that I used in this video, applicable links are going to be down below. But anything outside of that, throw it in the comments and I will gladly get back to you. Thank you.